Good day, everyone. I am Ma'am Honey. Welcome to the short video lecture I have prepared for Lesson 1 entitled Different Periods of Philippine Literature. Etymologically, the term literature derives from the Latin term litera, which means acquaintance with letters. Some loosely interpret literature as any printed matter written within a book, a magazine, or a pamphlet. Somehow, this is a limited definition since literature also applies to spoken and song texts. Definitions of literature have varied over time. It is sometimes defined as a faithful reproduction of man's manifold experiences blended into one harmonious expression. Others describe it as a piece of work that is undying, may it be oral, written, or visual. It portrays human existence. It expresses the feelings and emotions of people in response to their everyday efforts to live and interact with their environment. Because literature deals with ideas, thoughts, and emotions of man, literature is said to be the story of man. Man's loves, griefs, thoughts, dreams, and aspirations couched in beautiful language is literature. Studying literature is like looking at the mirror of life, where man's experiences, innermost feelings, and thoughts are reflected. Classification of literature. Literature can be classified according to structure, form, and genre. For structure, it can be fiction or non-fiction. These two can sometimes intersect, but in general, fiction refers to plot, settings, and characters created from the imagination, while non-fiction refers to factual stories focused on actual events and people. In terms of form, literature can be prose or poetry. Prose uses normal language patterns and is written in sentences and paragraphs. Poetry, on the other hand, is written in lines and stanzas. It uses artistic language. Genre deals with the category of an art, music, or literature. Comedy, drama, horror, and mystery are genres. There could also be subgenres in literature. Examples under the mystery genre are the subgenres of thrillers, suspense, and investigative. Philippine literature. The beginnings of our country's literature had started with fables and legends made by ancient Filipinos long before the arrival of Spanish influence. Our Philippine literature has achieved a stature so phenomenal since the inception of both Spanish and English languages in our culture. Why do we need to study Philippine literature? Regardless of your nationality, it is always very important to study the literature of your own country. In doing so, you are not only learning the historical aspects of your land, but you are also keeping alive the thoughts, beliefs, and cultural variations of your ancestors that differentiate your country from the rest of the world. Literature and history. Literature is a diverse and rich group of works that has evolved side by side with the country's history. The main connection between literature and history is that literature is used to report and represent history. The two are intertwined with one another. However, there's a big difference between the two. History poses itself as a fact, while literature is taken to be an artistic form. Different periods of Philippine literature. Philippine literature withstood time and periods and has evolved through generations. For every period that passed, different genres appeared, and these literary works rooted from all regions, reflecting their culture, society, and lifestyle. Time frames may not be necessary in the study of literature, but since literature and history are inescapably related, it has become facilitative to map up a system which will aid you in delineating certain time boundaries. Pre-colonial period. In the pre-colonial period, literature was in oral form as technology of printing is not available yet. The sources are usually the local native town folks. Works such as epics, legends, folklore, sa lawikain, bugtong, sa wikain, songs such as the Oyayi or Hele are passed on from generations to generations, and they are still well known up to this day as they are being taught in schools. Spanish colonization period. Philippine literature changed during the Spanish period. It was centered on the Christian faith. Pre-Spanish literary types continued to develop. However, there was a gradual shift of interest from the nature and natural phenomena to the lives of the saints, hymns, miracles, and invocations based on the teachings of the Catholic Church. The works during this time are imitative of the Spanish theme, forms, and traditions. Religious matters were in prose as novenas and prayer books, biographies of the saints, tales, and novels. Nationalistic, propaganda, and revolutionary period. The nationalistic period has two movements: the propaganda movement and revolutionary movement. The propaganda movement was reformatory and objective, and its members are college students mostly based in Spain. The primary propagandists were Jose Rizal, Marcelo H. del Pilar, and Graciano Lopez Haina. The exposure of the evils of the Spanish rule in the Philippines was because of Rizal's Noli Me Tangere and El Filibusterismo. This has paved the way to a revolution against Spain. The revolutionary movement took over as the propagandists failed to get much reforms. This was of course more violent, and it demands complete independence from Spain. The Katipunan was founded by Andres Bonifacio, who was inspired by Rizal's novels. American colonial period. In the American period, the country had a great leap in education and culture. The use of English alongside Filipino was practiced. The literature during this period was imitative of the American models. Instead of writing Filipino originals, they end up following the form of American poets and writers. Japanese occupation. As the Filipino writers started to master the English language, this came to stop when the use of the English language was forbidden. However, this had an advantageous effect on Filipino literature, which experienced renewed attention because writers in English turned to writing in Filipino. The rebirth of freedom. This was the period when Philippines regained its freedom and the Filipino flag waved joyously alone. The chains were finally broken. There was a proliferation of newspapers as Filipinos learned to express themselves confidently. Journalists had their day. Contemporary or modern period. The Philippine literature blossomed in this period. Filipino writers mastered various languages, especially with the appearance of new publications after martial law. They continued to write poetry, short stories, novels, and essays, whether these are socially committed, gender or ethnic related, or are personal intentions or not. Notable Filipino writers and works. Here are some notable Filipino writers and works that changed the world. They are still being taught in schools and continues to change the world until now. Regional literature. Local color or regional literature is fiction and poetry that focuses on the characters, dialects, customs, topography, and other features particular to a specific region. As Bicolanos, we have Bicolano literature as our regional literature. Bicolano literature. Bicol is the language of almost 5 million people in the provinces of Albay, Camarines Norte, Camarines Sur, Catanduanes, Masbate, and Sorsogon that constitute the Bicol region. Bicolano literature has flourished, providing a lively literary flavor unrivaled by any other literary tradition. Just like other local traditions and cultures in the country, Bicolano literature has its roots in orally transmitted poems and mythical narratives that reflect the history of people. Characteristics of Bicol literature. The transformation of literature can be traced by going through local and national history. The Bicol people have a writing tradition with roots in its ancient folkways. Tigsik is a form of short poetry in the Bicol language that often are cynical or flattering and tends to touch certain topics, issues, and people. It's akin to a haiku but more snappish and deliberate. Tigsiks are often delivered spontaneously with 2 to 4 lines. Indeed, the diversity and richness of Philippine literature evolve side by side with the country's history. This can best be appreciated in the context of the country's pre-colonial cultural traditions and the socio-political histories of its colonial and contemporary traditions.